So one question that I get a lot is, can I just do a render and not a model? And the simple answer to that question is no. And the reason is because rendering is not something that goes into a Photoshop program. What rendering is it actually takes something, your model, that lives in this virtual world, and it applies different metals or stone colors and light refraction to a surface, but that surface has to be born in here. So sometimes what we can do is do like a really quick model that's kind of unfinished, but you're still, no matter what, you still have to have a model in the system to run a render. Otherwise, what you need is just a hand sketch. So I want to talk a little bit about rendering and why, explain why I have 3 different tiers of pricing for rendering. So I'm going to go ahead and load up a ring that I made for iconery.com, and the designer on this was Stone Fox Bride. And so the model is done on this piece. And so what you're going to notice here is all of the prongs are a little bit high. And the reason for that is because this is born into wax and then into metal, and then it has to be hand finished. So your CAD model will always have surfaces and prongs that are slightly higher or sharper than what you're going to see in the finished product. Okay, so I'm going to do the initial render, which initial renders we start at 500 by 500. And we go through and select the appropriate materials. Those are going to be diamonds, and these are going to be rubies. And this ring was done in a variety of metals, but we're going to go ahead and choose yellow gold for this one. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start that up. Put a plain background on it, and this is what we would call a standard render. So I didn't really touch the model at all to do the render. All I did was I made the model for manufacturing, and then I assigned a material to each surface. Okay, all right, so I'm going to hit the render button, and we're going to notice here it is 3:12 p.m. on the clock. And so I'm going to hit the pause button and wait for this guy to finish. Okay, now for the demo, I didn't change the centering of this, but that would be definitely something that I would change. But let's take a look at this render. So it's rendered at 500 by 500. We can make it a little bit bigger here on the screen. And you're going to notice that the back of this piece is as sharp a focus as the top is. Also, the computer doesn't know what can and cannot be polished, so it applies that shiny finish even to the recessed areas. But this is what we would call a standard render. It's quick. And so the time now is 3:15. So that render took the computer about 3 minutes to do. And they do range. So if we were doing yellow, silver, and platinum, and pink, gold, it'd take a little while to get through all of those, and that's why we charge for renders, because it does take the computer a little bit of time. You do have to set it up. But let's get into the difference in rendering. Okay, so if we're gonna go ahead and reload up another one here. Now this is one I've already got set up. So I've got the model oriented on here. I have this little red dot there, and what that is, we're going to do more of a photorealistic render here. So we're going to change this to 1000 by 1000. And please note too that the larger the resolution, the longer it takes to render. So let's say I did 1000 by 1000 on that last render, it would take 6 minutes to run instead of 3. So you can tell that that would add up quite quickly, all that time and setup to do this ring in each color. Okay, so if we had 1,000 by 1,000, oh yeah, what we're gonna do is we've already, let's see, yeah, I've already assigned these colors. So I already went through and assigned that for the demo. And so if I go over here to scene, I'm going to change the way that the computer thinks that it's seeing it. So it's going to look at it more like it's coming through a camera. And to do that, we turn on something called depth of field, which slows down the render a lot, but it makes for a really nice effect. So I'm just going to set the camera target there, apply that, and then we're going to render that one. And let's see, it's 3:17 right now, so I'm just going to go ahead and hit the pause. Okay, so that took about 10 minutes. It is now 3:27, and that you can tell that when you look at that render, that as it's going away from view, it's losing focus, which is what makes it look a little bit more realistic than that first one. But just that one change added 7 minutes of time to the render. And so again, these are all set up and ready to go for the demonstration, but think about getting it all set up and positioned and then rendering it not just once, but it has to be rendered for each color and each stone that it's available in. So it can really suck up a lot of time out of the computer, which is why it's a different price point to do a little bit more photorealistic. Now that's simply just one level up from what can be done. Let's talk about another, let's talk about level 3 pricing. Level 3 pricing comes from really getting into the nitty-gritty and making it look like a real piece, not just a real photo. So turning the depth of field on makes it look like a real photo. However, when we actually take the surfaces of this ring and we start to say to ourselves, you know, gosh darn it, as a goldsmith, I know that these recessed areas down here will never be polished. I know that the polished surfaces are going to rest up here. So what you can do for the render is you go through and explode all these surfaces, which, by the way, let's see, if I explode all the surfaces on here, this is made up of 980 surfaces, which means that there's 980 possible things to click on to make it into a different color or a different metal finish for the render. So what I'm going to do is go through and pick all the spots on here that can be differentiated in the metal finishes. And I'll go through and I'll choose all of the high polish areas as high polish, but then I'll go through and make all those lower areas, like through here, I'll make that into a matte polish, and that's going to give us a more realistic finished look, as well as something that has more of a photorealistic. Okay, so we're anticipating how the piece is going to be finished and anticipating how it would be shot with a camera. And so those two things is what makes it different than just a standard free render that comes with every CAD model. Okay, so we're picking the finishes, and then we're also going to tell the computer to look at it through the lens of a camera and make it kind of go out of focus as it gets farther away. So I already have that set up right here. Actually, what we got to do here, let's do this. Okay, perfect. All right, so here I have it all exploded already. And the prongs and those red areas are going to be high polish. And all of those lowered areas are going to be matte. I already picked the colors for the stones previously. And then I'm also going to tell the computer where I want that camera to focus on. Okay, and I'm going to start this render up and hit pause. And so the time right now is 3:31. So we'll see how long that takes, okay? Okay, so that's another 10-minute render there. So the depth of field, you can see how it's falling off here, but now you can also see a difference in the finishes in different areas on this, and that's going to give it a more realistic finished look. Now we can play with these materials all day long over here. When we don't get the right effect, where it just doesn't look realistic, we can go through here and change up the metal colors and the finishes and the textures and the properties. And when we get into stones, we can mess around with the colors. There's so much that can be done on a render program. It's really the sky's the limit. Problem is that when we talk about doing it for a client and for business, it's like what can you expect, and do you know what it is that you're asking for? So the more realistic the render needs to be, the more the more work goes into the front end and hitting the render button. Another thing that we'll do a lot of times on something other than a standard render is we actually take these prongs and lower them so they look more finished. And it's one of those things we might go through one by one, changing each little thing until we get the look that we want to. We also can go through and soften edges, which when we have multiple surfaces are different than these multiple surfaces are different than doing a solid piece. See how I just softened that edge right there? So now when that renders, you're not going to have that sharp edge. And there is a tool that will do all of them, but it has to be a solid, which means that I can't assign matte finish, high polish finish. So I mean, the list goes on and on and on with rendering, but to know what it is that a render is really helps with communication between designer and client. We can also give you spec sheets. Always come with each model that shows you the dimensions with a few renders. So the standard renders are totally free, but when we get into the more complicated ones, as you can see from the demo, it just takes longer, and you have to fuss with the model a lot more to get it to do what you want it to do. Okay, I hope this demo was enlightening, and please feel free to email me with any questions. Thank you.